Hi, my name is Ben Sayer. Welcome to this second video in the Perennial Genealogy series. In this program, I help you to ensure that your family history research is not lost nor forgotten. In this video, I'm going to have you think about your wishes around access to your family history research information and other materials, photographs, documents, that sort of thing. And have you take notes about your thoughts about your wishes. We're not actually going to do anything with them other than capture them at this stage and set them aside. So let's begin. In order for your steward to carry out your wishes, to perform as a steward, you need to have shared your wishes. And in order to have shared your wishes, you need to know what your wishes are. So that's why this is the first step in this Perennial Genealogy program. Understanding your wishes. And in this first one, we're going to talk about specifically and think about access to your genealogy materials. And under accessing it, I'm breaking this down into three major components. And other things will come to you. By all means, note them down. In fact, now is a great time to pause the video and get note-taking materials, whether that's a tablet, paper and writing materials, or your computer, whichever one. Just pause it, get what you need, and come on back, and I'll be waiting for you. Okay, whether you needed the break or not, let's get going. So we're going to break those things into three categories, I said, and I want you to think about access to your genealogical materials in three areas. The first one is viewing those materials. The second one is duplicating those materials. And the third one is updating, changing, adding to, that sort of thing. So let's back up to viewing your materials. In order to think about this, I want you to think about what materials you have. So let's not get bogged down in details on this thing, because we tend to be detail people, and it's really easy for us to go down a rat hole and never get anywhere because we're thinking about in detail specific records and specific documents and things like that. Let's just keep it at a higher level right now. Let's think at the level of photographs, GEDCOM file, birth, death, marriage records that you may have copies of, memorabilia that you might have for the family. Think about it at that level, what materials you have, and then think about who might want access to that, whether it's family members, whether it's genealogists who are in the same lineage, but genealogists that are outside that lineage, other historical researchers. They may not even be genealogists, but just history researchers. Do you want to have that information available to them? So just jot down some notes about who you think might be interested in what you have, and then think about those things that you have and those people, and what, if anything, you want them to have access to, and under what circumstances you want them to be able to view them. So for instance, a GEDCOM file. Your steward's going to have a copy of your GEDCOM files. Under what circumstances would you want family members to be able to go and see the information that's in your GEDCOM, or another genealogist to be able to see what's in your GEDCOM, or even not only just your GEDCOM, but think of it as the reports that you can generate from your GEDCOM, family group sheets, register reports, all those kinds of things. Under what circumstances do you want people to be able to view those things? Historians, genealogists, family, all those kinds of things. Think about those scenarios and take some notes on those. Now, one of the things I'll mention about that before we move on to duplicating is the whole issues of privacy around living relatives. That's another thing that you'll want to spend some time thinking about. Most of the genealogy applications allow you to mark records for people as living, and so they could be excluded from, relatively easily excluded from the information you want to make available. So that you might want to get a little more granular on that and say, family members can see the GEDCOM or these reports with information about living relatives unobscured, but genealogists can see the information only with living people obscured, if that's what your wishes are. One of the things that I'll point out about this is, and one of the things that you'd have figured out on your own, is that the less restrictive you are about access to your information, the easier this job actually is as far as getting the steward set up. And also the easier it is for the steward because they have less restrictive parameters to operate under. But if that doesn't mean that shouldn't sway you from going to being open. If you don't feel that way, by all means, I'm not trying to coerce you into doing that by making it easier for you. I'm just observing that it is easier if you're open. If you do have restrictions around those things, it's very important right now to be able to identify those so that we can get them in the materials that you're going to give to your steward so they understand the parameters that they're going to operate under. And also so that they understand when you're asking them to take on that role that you've thought about it, that you've provided the parameters for them to operate under, so it becomes less of a burden for them and they understand what it is that you want done and why. It's also important as you make notes about these things to jot down not only what you want but why, because events happen in strange ways and something may happen that's not exactly the letter of the situation that you've outlined, and you want your steward to understand why you made the choices that you did as well, because that can help them to stick to not only the letter of the law, as we say, but also the spirit of it. So you want them to understand the spirit of where you're going with your access to your information so that they can honor that. Now let's talk about duplicating information. So you've got all this information, you've identified what you have and who might be interested in it. So you can use that, you can leverage that in this step and think about that same you can think about how the who and the why and the circumstances intersect. So you'll want to think about, this is about not just viewing your information, but who can have copies of what. So copies of photos, copies of your GEDCOM, copies of reports, copies of memorabilia, copies of records that you have. Who can have what and under what circumstances. Take time, think about those things, and make notes about it, about what and why.